your warm-up this morning. You need to use the digits 0 through 9, and I'll give you two options. You can either choose to repeat or choose to not. I'll let that be your decision. Create 2 points that when you calculated the slope, it would equal this. No negatives. I mean, you're going to end up subtracting, but don't put in a negative. So use the digits 0 through 9, put them in here, calculate it, see if you get this slope. I'll give you like 5 or so minutes to do that. If you're still working on yours and it comes out, or you work it out and it works, let me know. And we can put that up as well. So I have Adanya and Michaela's. This one was Adanya's. So if we were doing the math for this one, it would be 1 minus 8 over 7 minus 2, which would give us that negative 7/5. So that would work. And then Michaela's was that would be 9 minus 2, 2 minus 7. Even though this one we get a positive 7 over a negative 5, these are the same thing. We would just change where the negative is. So those would both work. Are there any others we wanted to see? Does it work? So really you have to think about what minus what would give me a negative 7 or a positive 7. One of them had to be negative, one of them had to be positive, and then what minus what would give me 5 or negative 5. Okay, so thinking about what you did last class, but also trying to make your own of it. Before we get into our notes for today, I wanted to say this, just in case you didn't get my email. I will not have office hours today. I have to take my sister to a doctor's appointment. But I will have office hours tomorrow and Thursday. So keep those in mind. We were in these notes, but I want you to find the page that looks like this. Does anyone need another one of those notes? So we need to know that linear equations are commonly written in slope-intercept form. Does anyone know what that format looks like? James? Y equals mx plus e, where m we talked about last class is the slope. What's the b? The y-intercept. So with this, we'll need to be able to, what we're about to do is more writing, which we'll get to later, but we'll need to be able to write later down the line, but also be able to identify what the slope and y-intercept is from your slope-intercept form, but right now we'll just write. So for number 1, if we're given the slope and the y-intercept, we want it in this format, so it's going to be y equals, whatever our m is, put x behind it. B doesn't always have to be positive, so whatever sign, positive or negative it is, you would put that. Questions on that? Okay, so how would we write number 2?
Y equals negative 3x plus 4.
So we have x plus 4. Okay, so don't forget your y and your x in this is the most important part to make it an equation. Just make sure you're writing this down. Okay, let's try number 5. How would we rate that one?
Y equals 4x.
Do you have a choice here. You can either write 1/4 x or you can write 1/4 x plus 0. Either or does not matter. Are there any others in this section you want to do, see, go over, have questions about? We're skipping 7 and 8 because it's more of a writing thing. Go on to the next page. So sometimes they are not in slope-intercept form. Sometimes they are in standard form, which looks like this. ax plus by equals c. Where we have to solve this to get it back in slope-intercept form. So this is very much like the literal equations we were just doing, trying to rearrange this so that we get y equals again. So if we had an equation like number 1, and we were trying to get this back into y equals mx plus b, what would we do first? How would we get y by itself? So not divide. Subtract this entire term. Move it to the other side. Now, I'm writing it as is for now, but we want this in slope-intercept form where it's mx before the b, so I'm going to switch these two. When you do that, whatever sign is in front needs to stay with it. So this should be negative 2x plus 3. If you switch the signs, you're going to change the slope and y-intercept. So be careful, don't do that. Questions on that one before we do another? Okay. For number 2, what would be our first step? Subtract the 4x, the entire term. This will most likely be the first step for almost all of these. Get rid of the x term by adding or subtracting. Now, in this one, I'm going to go ahead and switch the order of these so I don't have to do it later. So put negative 4x and then minus 30. Whether you do that now or later does not matter. You just have to do it eventually. Right, what would be our next step? Yes, but we're going to divide every single thing by 5. And simplify. For this, your y-intercept can be a whole number, can be a fraction, can be a decimal, it doesn't matter. Your slope has to be a fraction. It has to remain a ratio of rise over run. So if it cannot be simplified, it just stays negative 4 over 5. What would our y-intercept be?
36.
Questions on that one? Let's do number 3. First step, get rid of x, subtract it to the other side. I'm going to go ahead and rearrange so that we have negative x plus 12. And then to get y by itself, divide everything by negative 3. When you do that, what would our equation become?
Positive.
So this would be positive, yes. What's the number?
1.
1, but we're dividing by 3. So not 3, not 1, but we're dividing by 3. So not 3x, but we're dividing. So there's an invisible 1 right here. So it'd be 1/3. So anytime you don't have a number in front, you have to change that to a fraction 1/3 or negative, depending on the equation. Okay. Any questions, confusions on this so far? Alright, we're going to try a couple more, and I'll let you try a couple, and then we'll move on to something else. Okay, number 5, what's our first step? sides. So make sure you're saying / doing the entire term, not just the number. We can't leave x by itself, it's attached. So in this case, you can put +0 or you can leave it off, it's up to you. To get y by itself, divide by -1. There's an invisible 1 in front. So this one you can either leave as y equals 4x, or if you've added the 0 and divided, you can put yx plus 0, 4x plus 0. Either or doesn't matter. Number 7. What would be our first step in that one? What would we do first? Get rid of that extra. Yes. So this is the only case where it's been different because this is a negative, so instead of subtracting, we have to add. But everything else will be the same. So to get y by itself, divide everything by 4 separately. So that our new equation, simplify, would be what?
3 over 2 plus 12.
3 over 2x plus, what was the last part?
Plus 5.
Plus 5. I want you to try number 6. If you finish number 6, raise your hand and come check it. If you want to try 4/8, I think you did 3. Yeah. Then you can try those, but really I'm just looking for number 6 right now. Okay, I'm going to put up number 6. Our equation should have been y equals 3 over 2x plus 7. Everything became positive because everything was negative. We divided by negative. Do we have any questions on how to change our or convert our standard form to slope-intercept form?
Does it matter what order it's in?
Yes. So it has to be in y equals mx plus b. If it's not in that order, you need to change it. Really quickly, just to refresh our memory. And number 2, what would our slope be? -4/5. Number 3, what's our y-intercept? -4. So keep that in mind that the number in front of x, not the x itself, is your slope. The number by itself without a variable is your y-intercept. Right, we are going to switch gears. Right, so couple things with slope in general. So if you have a graph, you don't really need to use desmos because you already have a graph. But if you're given 2 points, so let's say I'm just going to put in 2 random points from one of the pages, like number 1. I'm going to put them in as 2 separate ordered pairs. You can label them if you so choose. If it's easy to count, so remember that you can be trying this on your desmos on the iPad as well. If it's easy to count from where it is, you don't need to change anything. But if you would like to, if it makes it easier, you could go into your settings. So if you're on Desmos, you're going to do this. Go into the settings, take off the minor grid lines, and change the step to 1 for both of these. Now, for the one we just had, the counting was pretty easy, so we could have counted without these. But this I can easily see I'm going up 2 and to the right 3 to help me find that slope. So this is a good way to check yourself. You would still need to show the work on a quiz on the test, and you won't have desmos on the quiz on the test. But while you're practicing, using Delta Math at home, anything like that in class where you're practicing, you can be double checking your answers in desmos. So counting is a good way to use the graph. Anyone need to see that again? Did you need to see that again? Yes. So let's read. So I put in the points just as ordered pairs. There are parentheses in here where you can type them. I put in labels. You don't have to label them, but for me it helps me see them easier. And then if you want to change the setting, go into the wrench, take off the minor grid lines, change the step to 1 for both. And then it just makes it a little bit clearer, easier to read the graph. Because everything is numbered except on regular Desmos, everything is not numbered. Right. Something else you can do in Desmos, especially for the converting when you're practicing, is if you put in one of yours, like the original, so I'm going to put in the first one, 2x plus y equals 3. And I'm going to put in what we got, which was y equals negative 2x plus 3. You didn't see it because it happened fast. But if I go in and I change this, you can see that they're overlapping. So if you put in both the original and what you saw, you should see if they match up or not. If they're not lying on top of another, you did something wrong. Forgot a negative, divided incorrectly, something. So that's a good way to check yourself. That's really it for slope right now. We'll do more slope stuff when we get into graphing and writing. Questions on anything Desmos related with slope? Okay. So if you were using Desmos, go ahead and put that away for now. We'll come back to that here in a bit. And then we're also going to start our notes on intercepts today. So there's a bunch of notes that you need to take, so I'm going to let you guys write. I'm going to talk through it. You do not need to write every single word for word. You can summarize, but I'm going to read it word for word and then summarize. So for definition of intercepts. Your x-intercept graphically is the point or points where the graph crosses, touches, or intersects the x-axis. Algebraically, it's the point or points at which f of x or y is 0, equals 0. So to summarize, graphically, where it crosses the x-axis, algebraically, where y is 0, equals 0. Y-intercept, graphically, the point or points where the graph crosses, touches, or intersects the y-axis. Algebraically, the point or points at which x equals 0. So summary, graphically, where it crosses the y-axis, algebraically, where x equals 0. Intercept should always be written as an ordered pair. So that's going to be in parentheses, x comma y. From this last part, you really just need, I'm going to highlight it. That part, you don't really need everything else. X-intercepts are also called roots, solutions, and zeros. I'll explain why though. So roots you usually see with quadratic functions, which we're not doing at the moment, but we will do later in the year. Solutions because it makes the equation true, which we've seen before. And zeros because it makes the equation or f of x or y equal to 0. when you finish writing, moving on to the time's sake. So we're going to try some of these examples. Your number 2 and number 3 don't match mine, so look at yours, don't look at mine. But we're going to start with number 1, and we're looking for where does this line cross the x and y axis. If it helps you, outline the x and y axis so you don't get it confused or miscount. Where does that line cross the x-axis?
2.
At positive 2. So I would write that as an ordered pair, 2, 0. Where does that line cross the y-axis? Negative 3. So I would put that as an ordered pair, 0, negative 3. So that's all we have to do for this part. Just find where does the function cross the x and y axis. So for your number 2, where does it cross the x-axis? There are 2 places. Give me one of them.
1.
1. So that would be 1, 0. Where is the other?
Negative 2.
Negative 2. So negative 2, 0. Right. The y-intercept is going to be like a decimal. You can make up this decimal. Where about does it cross the y-axis? Sure. 0, 1.2. You want to go 1.5, 1.3, 1.4, any of those. You want to be very specific and go 1.35, whatever. As long as it makes sense. 1.9 probably wouldn't make sense because it's not close to 2. 1.1 wouldn't make sense because it's not close to 1. But somewhere in there. Alright. Are there any others, 3, 4, 5, or 6 that we want to see, do go over, have questions about? If not, go on to the next page. Now, on the next page, we're going to solve these by hand. So, first, when you see f of x, that is the same thing as y. So if you want to change that to y equals, you are more than welcome to do that. If you want to leave it knowing that they're the same, you can also do that. It's up to you. F of x is more for functions. Y is more for equations, but they're really the same thing. Now, algebraically, if we want to find an x-intercept, our y value has to be 0. So I'm going to take where y was and put 0 in for it. And then once 0 is in there, now we can solve for x by doing what? Subtracting. Adding 8. And then dividing both sides by 4. Now, we still have to write these as ordered pairs, so even though you solved it and got 2, we have to write it as the ordered pair, so 2, 0. Then we're going to go back and do the same thing for our y-intercept. So if I'm using, let's say, this equation, if I'm looking for a y-intercept, my x value has to be 0. So I'm going to put 0 in for x. What would my y-intercept be? Negative 8. It's easier to find the y-intercept than the x-intercept. It's more work when it's in this format, because this is basically your slope-intercept form. So when it's in this format, you don't even have to do this work. You could just say, this is my y-intercept, and write it as an ordered pair. If you still show the work, that's fine, in this format. There's a different format where you have to show the work no matter what. Notice that I'm putting x basically equals this order pair, y basically equals this order pair. You have to be able to identify which is which order pair is which. You're just writing down work. Maybe at the end you put x equals 2 and then right next to that you put the order pair. That would be fine. But if you have work over here, but then you put your answers over here, you have to label which one is which order pair is which. Alright, we're going to try another one of these and then any others you guys want to try. So for number 4, let's start with the y-intercept this time. What would that be?
Plus 6.
Not plus. This is minus. This is opposite of what you said. Negative 6. So again, you don't need to do the work for that one because it's in slope-intercept form. You could just write it. But for x-intercept, we have to show the work. Now, I'm not going to rewrite this one, but if you want to, go for it. I know that f of x is the same as y. I'm solving for x, and I know this needs to be 0. So I'm just going to erase that and put 0 in its place. And solve for x, by adding 6. And then doing what to get rid of the 2/3? So at this time, we should be thinking about not dividing, but the opposite, multiplying by the reciprocal. So taking it and flipping it and multiplying on both sides. So that x equals Do we have any questions on number 4? Or other questions on 1 through 6 that we want to see you go over and have questions about? Which one? 5, sure. For 5, what's your y-intercept? How would I write that as an order pair? 0, 2. For your x-intercept, we're going to change this to be 0 and solve by subtracting 2. And then doing what to get rid of the 1/2? Which would be 2. Or you can just do either or for that one. So that our x value equals, and how would we write that as an order pair? 4. Other ones in that section we'll let see you go over and have questions about. Now I'm going to show you how to find x and y intercepts in the calculator. So this is helpful for any equation, whether it's linear or has exponents. Now, if it has exponents, it's expected that you do it in the calculator and desmos, whatever. But for all the linear ones, all the ones we just did, those you should be able to do by hand. I'm going to show you in the calculator first because that has more steps. So first, let's reset our calculator. 2nd plus 7, 1, 2. Reset our calculator. Do you have your calculator? Now the steps are on the side of the paper if you get lost, but I'm also saying them out loud, there'll be buttons down here. You're going to go into y equals at the top. And you're going to type in, let's do number 1. So you need a variable, x squared, and then minus 16. So make sure the variable is in there, otherwise it won't work. Once you have that in there, you're going to go into graph. So just hit graph. You should be able to see some function that looks like this. We're going to do the x-intercepts first, because there's more steps there. To do anything x or y intercepts, you're going to go into calculate above trace, so second trace. Remember that 0 is another name for x-intercept, so we're going to go into 0, number 2. And it's going to ask you for a left back. So we can only do one x-intercept at a time. One, we can see what the x-intercepts are, where they cross, but maybe it was on a decimal, or we couldn't see for certain, or we wanted this to be shorter. So let's say we were finding this x-intercept. We need some number to the left of this. So give me some number to the left of this. Sure. If -8 is not on your screen, then that's okay. Yours may just have this cursor at the top, but mine has this line. That tells me it's not going to look past that line. Now I ask for a right bound. So same thing, but now on this side, some number to the right of this x-intercept, but that doesn't go past this one. So somewhere in the middle. Give me a number in the middle. 1 works. Okay, type in 1 and hit enter. Now it has 2 lines, and it's going to say, it's basically saying it's looking between those 2 points where your x-intercept is. Then there's an option for guess. You don't want to do that. You want the calculator to do the work, so just hit enter again. And it's going to tell you what the x-intercept is, -40. And then we write that down. I'm going to do it once more so you can see the other one, just in case you missed any of those steps the first time. So second trace, we're going to go into 0. But now I want to find this x-intercept. So I need a number that is to the left of this, but that doesn't go past this. So somewhere in the middle.
1.
Sure. I'm going to type in 1 and hit enter. Now I need some number to the right of this.
8.
Sure. I'm going to type in 8, hit enter. And then I'm going to hit enter once more. And it's going to tell me what the x-intercept is. So 40 is what I would write. Questions on how to find x-intercepts in the calculator before I show you the y. Y-intercept is same place, second trace, but instead of 0 now we're going to go into value, so number 1. And you get a screen asking about x equals. If we're looking for a y-intercept, what does x have to be? What value?
0.
0. So we're going to put 0 in here and hit enter. And it's going to tell you what that y-intercept is. You don't see it, it's off the screen, but later it would eventually cross at -16. Questions on how we find the y-intercept in the calculator? Right, now I'm going to show you in Desmos. So go ahead and open up your iPad to Desmos. We're going to pick one of these. I'm going to show you that in Desmos, and then we're going to practice some more. So numbers 2 through 10, pick one of them. Someone pick one of those, numbers 2 through 10. Which one did you say, Kevin? 6. You want to do 5? Alright, so I'm going to do number 6 up here. I'm going to type in negative x squared plus 7x minus 10. Now, if nothing is clicked, if you click on the graph, it's going to highlight where your x-intercepts are. It'll also highlight like highest and lowest points. Ignore that one because this is not an x or a y-intercept. You may need to zoom out find y-intercept, but you can easily find your x and y-intercepts by clicking on those points and then writing them down. It's much easier in Desmos than in the calculator. So then we can write those down. 2, 0, 5, 0, 0, negative 10. Do we have any questions on how to find x and y-intercepts on Desmos? So, not today, but next class we're going to finish x and y-intercepts algebraically. That will be like the last page, but we're going to wait and do that next class. But for the rest of class, I want you to go through numbers 2 through 10, whatever ones we did not do. You can use your calculator or Desmos, and I want you to find those x and y-intercepts. You can work together, you can move around, but you need to be finding all of those x and y-intercepts. Once you have done all of them, you can put your calculator up.